He said he's getting into the black thing down in L.A., and the guy up in San Francisco said, what are you talking about? And he said, you know, we're selling it to the blacks. He said, you go into these neighborhoods, there's no cops, you can sell it where you want, and when they start killing each other, nobody cares. And that was his method for success. That and the fact that he met this kid, Freeway Ricky Ross, who lived in South Central, who knew the neighborhood, who knew the gangs, who knew the distribution system. You know, that's why.
Dark Alliance also focused on the lives of 3 men involved in shipping cocaine to the U.S. One was Freeway Ricky Ross, a legendary L.A. drug dealer. Oscar Danilo Blandon Reyes, considered by the U.S. government to be Nicaragua's biggest cocaine dealer living in the U.S. And Meneses Cantarero, a powerful Nicaraguan player who had allegedly recruited Blandon to sell drugs in support of the counter-revolution. The first article discussed Blandon and Meneses and their relationships with the Contras and the CIA. Most of the article highlighted the failure of law enforcement agencies to successfully prosecute them and stated that this was largely due to their Contra and CIA connections.
Blandon was always a very nice man. He was actually very soft-spoken. He wasn't about a lot of bling. He was very intelligent. He was formally educated. I was 13, and on the weekends, I would go and count money for my uncle. I asked him, well, what's this all for? And he kind of filled me in on that their families were very prominent in the government in Nicaragua. And when the Sandinistas came in, they were ousted.
There was a Contra Revolution, which was sponsored by the United States. Reagan was in power, and Reagan was anti-communist.
They are counter-revolutionary, and God bless them for being that way. And I guess that makes them Contras, and so it makes me a Contra, too.
They had to support themselves. And how did they support themselves? Drugs into the U.S.
They basically were supporting the Contras and not trafficking in drugs because that was a cool thing to do or because that was their childhood dream, but because they were patriots. They wanted their country back, and for no other reason. However, later on in the picture, you teach a man to fish, and he just might practice his trade.
The second article describes Blandon's background and how he began smuggling cocaine to support the Contras. Meneses, an established smuggler and a Contra supporter, taught Blandon how to smuggle and provided him with cocaine. When Freeway Ricky Ross discovered the market for crack cocaine in Los Angeles, he began buying cocaine from Blandon. That low-priced, high-purity cocaine is what allowed Ross to sew up Los Angeles and take off.
Ladies, I would like y'all to meet Franklin Saint.
Franklin Saint, king of all the white boys. I'm here to buy.
I don't sell coke to kids.
Well, what do you say?
You sell kilos to people with money.
Okay, grant me a key.
What is that?
Our future. I got 50 keys of Colombian white. I got no one to buy it.
So we need to find a drug dealer.
What kind of business we talking about? You about to move into the big leagues.
More product coming over the border means more competition.
You're being a little bit paranoid.
I'm a black man in America. Hell yeah, I'm paranoid.
I want Franklin in prison.
Shelf life of my line of work's pretty limited.
Crack cocaine epidemic of the 1980s. Jeffrey Kay of KCET Los Angeles reports.
The crack business was lucrative for high-powered dealers like Ricky Ross. Ross, now in federal prison in San Diego, became an overnight millionaire.
As much as maybe $1 million a day, $2 million a day sometimes. maybe more.
When I read your book, after watching, the first 2 seasons of Snowfall, I'm like, wow, a lot of this stuff is really like a one-to-one.
I should have benefited from it. People just feel that they can just, fuck over everybody. And then they don't really appreciate the things that I'll allow them to do. Plenty of times that people are like, man, let's go over there and tear a set up.
I built this me, brick by brick. And I'll be damned if I let you tear it down just because you don't like the way another talk.
The third article discussed the social effects of the crack trade, talking about the devastating impact that it had on Black America, asking why crack became so prevalent in the Black community of Los Angeles. Also found disparities in the treatment of Black and white traffickers in the justice system. I mean, when you even look at the 2 major traffickers' arrests. See, Blandon cooperated. He only spent about 28 months in prison. He became a paid government informant and received permanent residential status.
Let's talk a little bit about those documents for a second, because there's a gentleman, this figure that we talked about yesterday on the show. His name is Blandon, Danilo Blandon, who was a person who was a member of the aristocracy of Nicaragua before the fall of Somoza, and then he fled and comes to the United States and decides while he's in the United States, so you can all understand this, he wants to raise money for the revolutionaries who are trying to overthrow the government that just overthrew them. So here in the United States, they try to do fundraisers and that doesn't work. And then Blandon gets a scheme, well, I can get some cocaine cheaply with some help from some of my friends and get it into the United States of America. All I need to find is somebody who can sell it. So they find a gentleman by the name of Rick Ross, who is Freeway Rick. Rick Ross comes in and starts selling cocaine at the terms beginning 1 or 2 grams. And within weeks, 2, 3, 4 kilos a week. Within months, what was it, 10 to 15 kilos a day. Ricky Ross was selling cocaine to the point of making $3 to $4 million a day. He sold so much cocaine, it hurt his fingers to count the money. Not only in Los Angeles, but in Cincinnati, in St. Louis, all the way across America. So some can say, and this is the reason why people are so angry at you in your article, is that Ricky Ross, the dope dealer, was supplied by the CIA because Blandon was an operative for the CIA, correct?
Blandon and Meneses were working for an army that was a wholly owned subsidiary of the CIA. They were meeting with CIA agents. Blandon, and this came out in court. I mean, Danilo Blandon is now a government witness. He works for the Drug Enforcement Administration. And we've paid him, I don't know, $166,000 over the last 18 months because he's such a good informant. So they put him on the witness stand in Ricky Ross's case, and he testified.
Ross was also released early after cooperating in the investigation of police corruption. But he was rearrested a few months later in a sting operation. This was arranged by your boy Blandon. The article suggests that this was retribution for Ross's testimony in the corruption case.
Now, how does a black man meet a CIA agent? Like, how does that even happen?
Well, my guy, he wasn't a CIA agent. He was what they call a CIA operative. And the difference between an agent and an operative is from a separate country, and they're sent over here because their country has been taken over by, somebody that works against them. And he works with the CIA, but he can't be on the CIA. He can't be a CIA agent because he doesn't have a green card. He's not a natural citizen. You can only be a CIA agent if you're a natural citizen. But an operative can get money from the CIA and work for the CIA. So he was an operative. His handler was a CIA agent. So it's a little different. But when you look at it, it's all the CIA, you know, because they're responsible for whatever actions he take, but under the American laws, he can't actually hold the title of a CIA agent.
And they have a whole show named Snowfall that is depicted, they say, on your life. You mentioned in the interview that you actually met up with John Singleton, did the consultation.
Met up with him. We was working together.
There you go.
We was considered friends. So I mean, I considered him a friend. I don't know what he considered. I mean, you know, a lot of times, you know, when you're doing business with people, what I've learned over the years, even in the dope game, you know, the guy who set me up was a guy that I considered a friend. You know, I stayed at his house before. You know, I knew his kids, his wife, his mom, and he knew my mom. So I considered him a friend. But at the end of the day, when he got arrested and he decided that he was willing to sacrifice my life for his life, he set me up and then testified on me in court. So I thought me and John Singleton was friends, you know. No way that if I would have got a deal to do a show that I wouldn't have called John in to be a director. So when he got Snowfall, it was really hard for me to believe that, first of all, that he used so much of my stuff in Snowfall, and then that he didn't call me in as a consultant, John.
So I got a question, because and I hate it, because I love the show. But when I heard about what they did to you, I feel some type of way. I have a question, like, for you, how accurate was the show to your life? Like, did they veer off the path, like, during a certain season, or is it pretty much your story all the way through?
Well, you know, in the beginning, it's more to the real of the story. I see what they're doing. They change my words around a little bit and make it their words. But you can see in the beginning where it's really, really close, and they flipping it. You know what I'm saying? They trying to flip it. But I also can see when they start to run out of ammunition.
After publication of Dark Alliance, the Mercury News continued to pursue the story, publishing follow-ups to the original series for the next 3 months. Other papers were slow to pick up the story, but Black America quickly took note, especially in South Central.
There has never been an investigation about drug trafficking by CIA operatives that allowed tons of cocaine turned into crack to go into our inner cities, starting with Los Angeles, spread out among the gangs for sale, for profit, that went to the Contras. That kind of investigation has not been done by anybody.
California Senators Barbara Boxer and Dianne Feinstein also took note and wrote to the CIA Director John Deutch. Also, U.S. Attorney General Janet Reno. They wanted an all-out investigation into the article's allegations. 3 federal investigations had been announced. An investigation into the CIA allegations conducted by CIA Inspector General Frederick Hitz, an investigation into the law enforcement allegations by Justice Department Inspector General Michael Bromrich, and an investigation into the CIA by the House Intelligence Committee.
Asked of us by the judge was Ricky Ross ever an agent or a contract employee?
I was in court. I've been in court every time there's a ruling and everything because I'm part of it. And the judge asked the prosecutor to get a written statement from you saying there wasn't no involvement. You guys wrote a letter saying there's no involvement. Then you come up here and say it's still going on. So come Tuesday, the judge gonna tell me, oh, it was no involvement. You get 20 years. Rick, get life.
I want to be very clear. The judge asked for an affidavit from the Central Intelligence Agency whether any one of 5 individuals by name had ever had any association with the Central Intelligence Agency. Please let me finish. First of all, we answered that question. It's a public available answer. The record of that affidavit is available. Anybody wants to see it. And we found that none of the 5 named individuals had ever had any association with the Central Intelligence Agency.
On that deck, You guys knew that he was involved 20 years ago. And the declaration said he was a Nicaraguan mafia. And you guys knew he was selling drugs, but you didn't arrest him. You guys arrested him for 1 kilo and then gonna say me and Rick had 100 kilos and didn't even have no cocaine. And he get 5 years. Rick looking at life. My first offense, I'm looking at 20, and he's on his way out. And Blandon is out of jail, and you paid him $166,000.
The question that the judge put to the CIA was whether Blandon or any one of 4 other individuals were ever associated with the CIA. That question was answered. The answer is a matter of public record. It is absolutely the case that Blandon was an informant for the DEA. That is a question, though, which the DEA is answering, not a question which asks the CIA.
More than a decade before WikiLeaks and Edward Snowden, Gary Webb showcased the power and reach of online journalism. Key documents were hosted on the San Jose Mercury News website with hyperlinks, wiretap recordings, and follow-up stories.
Now, talk about the significance of Gary Webb, his life, his investigative journalism, Dark Alliance, and his ultimate suicide.
Well, history owes a great deal to Gary Webb. If it weren't for Gary and his courage in reviving this story in 1996, we would not have known anything near like the full picture of what happened in the 1980s. Some of us that were reporting it back then, myself and my colleague Brian Barger at the Associated Press wrote the first story in December of '85, and that sparked Senator John Kerry to do a fairly good investigation that reported more about this by 1989. But because the major news organizations back then did not want to pursue this very difficult and painful story, they tended to dismiss it back then as well. It was up to Gary Webb in reviving the story in 1996 that forced the CIA to finally take seriously this investigation. And the Inspector General, Frederick Hitz, did a fairly thorough job, produced a report that amounted to an institutional confession by the Central Intelligence Agency that indeed they were aware of the Contra drug trafficking as far back as 1981, that it had continued throughout the decade, and that the CIA had consistently protected those drug traffickers, even to the point of steering away investigations by the Drug Enforcement Administration and the Justice Department, as well as Congress. So you had the CIA finally coming to the table and admitting that what we reported in the 80s and what Webb reported in the 90s was in fact true.
Thanks for watching. Make sure you hit the thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Please follow the History with No Chaser Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok pages.